All 26 players are out there behind me, stepped onto the grass in the last few minutes and will be training their final training session ahead of that game against Ukraine. Now that will be very pleasing for that man there in the middle, Gareth Southgate. And I'm sure after masterminding one of the biggest victories of his time as manager against Germany, it's now the business end of preparations. This is where the intensity really steps up in this final training session, where they will ensure that they have the right tactics, the right formation, the right playing style, and they'll come together to put a plan together to ensure that they can get through to the semi-finals after beating Ukraine. So he has some big decisions to make though, Rob, on formation and personnel as well.
Well, we're seeing Gareth Southgate now. Obviously, he's got some not personnel decisions as well as tactical decisions to make. 3 at the back against Germany. Ukraine is a different game. There's always the clamour for getting another attack-minded player in there, isn't there? So who could that be?
Well, that's one of the key decisions he'll have to make. Switching to a back 3 against Germany was obviously very, very successful, but will he now revert back to a back 4 to allow for a more attacking player to come into a 3-man midfield? So far, when England have played a back 4, that man there, you can just see in the centre of your shot, running backwards, Mason Mount. He's been the favoured player in that position from Gareth Southgate before, of course, he suffered that setback of going into self-isolation. Mount did miss the Czech Republic game because he was in isolation. He wasn't involved for the Germany game after missing more than a week of team training, but he is a very highly thought of player when it comes to Gareth Southgate. Now, I wonder if we can find Jack Greenish, because he's another player that might be in contention for an attacking spot. Despite only starting one game, he's really become a fan favourite, Rob. Southgate labelled him a special talent. He had that impressive substitute appearance in the last match against Germany. He was involved in Sterling's goal. He got the assist for Harry Kane, but he did miss 14 weeks of the season through injury, and so Southgate will be managing his playing time to ensure he stays fresh. Also, Phil Foden, who just rung past Jack Greenish there. There he is, you can't miss him. Look at that hair. It gets brighter, I'm sure of it, every single time I see him. I think sometimes you forget, don't you, how young Phil Foden is, because of how mature and composed his performances have been for City in particular last season. 16 goals and 8 assists for the 21-year-old, and that's exactly what he offers. Creativity, Rob, attacking threat. He did start the first 2 games against Croatia and against Scotland, where he showed glimpses of that form that he's had for City, but he wasn't involved for the Czech Republic or Germany. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in contention for a starting place in the next game.
Yeah, so Phil Foden, one of those options, as you were saying, Grealish, I guess, would be the fans' favourite. But there's other factors Gareth Southgate has to take in mind here, isn't there, Jess? And bookings are a real issue for England. What impact do you think that will have on selection?
Yes, you're right, Rob. 4 players are 1 yellow card away from missing the semi-finals. Calvin Phillips, Declan Rice, Phil Foden, and that man just going through his drills there at the back of the shot, Harry Maguire. Now, Maguire has been such an important player for England, considering that he missed 7 weeks of football due to injury. He slotted back in at centre-back. I'm really impressed. You would expect to see him start against Ukraine, and that's regardless of whether Southgate sticks with a back 3 or reverts back to a back 4. He's been so key, such an important player. Another man on the yellow card, Declan Rice, who has formed a fantastic partnership with Kevin Phillips as the 2 defensive-minded players in England's midfield. He does all the hard work for the team in the centre of midfield. But he likes to pull in a challenge, of course, and that might be in Gareth Southgate's thinking. And I suppose making that balance between the risk of using him and the risk of him missing the semi-final if England were to beat Ukraine. And I mentioned Calvin Phillips. There he is there with the green bib on. Southgate thinks very highly of Calvin Phillips. He's played every minute of the tournament so far, and he's been brilliant for England, breaking up play in midfield. And he's doing a really good job, you have to say, of keeping the experienced Jordan Henderson out of the team. There's Jordan Henderson there. And he's another player who's having his minutes, I suppose, watched by Gareth Southgate, because he again missed 14 weeks of the season through injury. Was injured in the Merseyside derby for Liverpool back in February and is yet to reach full match fitness. And because of the important performances that Calvin Phillips and Declan Rice have put in, it's meant that Jordan Henderson has to, I suppose, fight for a place in this team once again. But I imagine Jordan Henderson will play some part in this game because of the experience he brings, Rob.